So you're cruising along in your Cherokee 6, and next thing you know, you get tangled up in one of these hobby drones. Makes a real mess out of your brand new 3-blade propeller. Now, you're probably familiar with uAvionix and their GA line of avionics, but even before GA, uAvionix was on the cutting edge of electronics for UAVs. Now, I recently caught up with uAvionix's Christian Ramsey to learn more about what the company is doing for traffic surveillance and how we're mixing it up with UAVs in general. You're Part 107 and private pilot guy, and let's talk practicalities. You know, I'm flying low and slow in my Vans RV-12, messing around at an uncontrolled airfield, maybe around some farmland. What are the chances of me running into a drone?
Well, I still think the chances are still pretty low, but they are high risk, right? So if that were to occur, then look, you're low and slow. You don't have a lot of recovery time. Most of the drones flying out there are hobbies and toys, right? And unfortunately, there's always the categories of clueless and careless flyers out there that are not necessarily flying out there trying to be safe, looking out for you and I as we're flying, and understand the rules and regulations of where they can fly, that it's their responsibility to get out of our way, right, in an aircraft. And and so the really tough thing about this whole environment is that low and slow environment is highest risk, right? You've got helicopters flying really low. You've got crop dusters that have a seconds to react. You've got low GA flyers who don't have the time or glide angle or glide slope to put it down somewhere if they have to. So it's the most dangerous environment to be in. Losing altitude is real, and so there are 500,000 or so licensed Part 107 pilots out there. The bar to become licensed under Part 107 isn't very high, but it is something, right? And it does teach you a bit about airspace, about awareness, about your responsibilities to avoid other aircraft. And that's still the case. That's still the sort of going policy and rules and regulations right now. Is the UAS operator has the responsibility to detect and avoid. See and avoid is our responsibility in a GA aircraft to see and avoid others. That translates to detect and avoid when you're flying a drone. It's the drone operator's responsibility to detect and avoid others, but they're not always equipped with the right tech. It's nearly impossible for a human eyeball to pick out a small drone, right, with enough time to react to get out of the way. Luckily, we haven't had any catastrophic incidents, yet. We saw recently with the California fires that Mavic, I think, that hit the firefighting, water bomber, and luckily nothing catastrophic happened there. But we put that aircraft out of service from fighting those fires, for several weeks until it could be repaired and brought back into service.
Before we talk about uAvionix technology, and there's some good stuff that you folks have been developing, let's talk pretty basic. So a GA airplane flying around with an ADSB mandated system, functional ADSB in and out, a Mode C or a Mode S transponder, or maybe even a TAS or TCAS traffic system. What unmanned aircraft can we see with this technology?
Well, very, very few, right? Very, very few. So both the TAS and the TCAS operate with communications with anything that's flying with a transponder on board. The ADSB in system, whether it's a portable or installed in your GA aircraft, operate on detecting a aircraft that has ADSB out on board. And the situation right now, frankly, is that the FAA has banned the use of ADSB out on most drones. There's regulations in place under Part 91 and under Part um, 89, which is the remote identification rules for drones, that literally ban the use of ADSB out on a drone. And they did that for reasons of preservation of the spectrum. They were concerned that if drones were to equip with ADSB, then frankly there'd be too many in the sky, and you'd have a cluttered airspace. Air traffic controllers wouldn't know what to do. You as a pilot wouldn't know what to do. They've mitigated a lot of those concerns over the years in terms of deciding which aircraft might be appropriate and which might not. For example, if you're flying a drone to take pictures of a roof of a house and you're 3 feet over the roof of that house, you don't really need ADSB, right? But if you're flying a pipeline inspection, if you're perhaps doing a delivery, right? If you're beyond line of sight, which is the key phrase in the industry, if you're flying beyond your visual eyesight, you need something else, right? And so, kind of back to your point, your question though, is that it is not your responsibility. We all want to see and avoid that drone, but it's not legally your responsibility to see and avoid that drone. It's the drone's legal responsibility to see and avoid you because you've got right of way, right? That doesn't make us feel better when we're flying, right? We want to see and we want to avoid, but that doesn't make us feel better from a legal perspective. Now, a lot of drones do have ADS-BN receivers, so a lot of them do, and we provide most of them, frankly, right? To those drone operators, to the drone manufacturers, we have ADS-B receivers in literally hundreds of thousands of drones, right? And so they can detect both ADS-B frequencies, whether you're a 978 UAT pilot or a 1090 ES pilot. They can see you usually, and that is somewhat comforting, right? In that you've got a lot of drones out there that are listening, searching for GA aircraft, helicopters, low altitude aircraft, high altitude aircraft, even, right? Doesn't differentiate. They can detect you incoming with tens or even hundreds of miles worth of range and time for them to avoid you by getting out of the way.
And it's automatic avoidance. There's no interaction with the operator.
Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. Even in the drone world, the FAA, just like in the general aviation world, you can imagine the FAA's opinion of something taking over your aircraft and maneuvering it. They place a lot of trust in the pilot, right? So in most cases, an alert is given to the pilot in command of the drone, or remote pilot in command, as they call it, in order to make the decision to take the safe maneuver to get out of the way. It really gets hard when that GA aircraft does not have ADS-B on board, right? Because we in the drone industry call those aircraft non-cooperative aircraft. And the non-cooperative aircraft are really, really hard to deal with because they're hard to see, they're hard to detect. There are only a couple of technologies out there that have proven to be successful. There are radars, right? You can have a radar in your drone, but that really increases the size of your drone, right? In order to carry a radar, really increases the expense, and honestly, questionable performance at low altitudes because you get a lot of ground clutter. If you've ever flown with a weather radar, sometimes if you've got the angle turned down, you get a lot of ground clutter.
Sure.
There are cameras. We've got some cameras in our portfolio, camera-based detect and avoid systems.
Mm-hmm.
Not great for night, not great for cloudy weather, not great for low-vis environments, right? Similar limitations. There are some drones that have a microphone on board, and they try to detect that there's a GA aircraft nearby just by the sound, try to triangulate where the sound's coming from. But yeah, it's really hard. And that's why we sort of attack it from both ends, where we're trying to find a solution that we can equip those GA aircraft with low-cost ADS-B out systems. We can equip the drones with ADS-B in systems. We call that kind of a universal equipage kind of environment where everyone's cooperative and talking to one another, and we can avoid.
Yeah, I think I hear you talking through this whole thing, and it brings me back to the early days of the ADS-B equipment mandate, where a lot of folks said, well, yeah, I don't fly in populated areas. I'm not going to be going through the New York or Boston beach space, and I'm just going to be out in the middle of nowhere flying around in my whatever it is, maybe it's a Cub or Champ or something. But folks probably didn't think much about drones back then, did they?
No, no.
And now it's a whole different world. So there's even more reason to be equipped if you fly out in remote areas.
Yeah, yeah, you're totally right. Back then, that was the founding premise of uAvionix at the time. Is let's miniaturize ADSB because we
Yeah,
foresaw the mandate and the equipage and what that would do for enabling drones. I mean, before we ever got into GA avionics, that was who we were in the very early years. And but you're right. The logic back then and held true for many years was I'm a rural flyer, right? I don't fly in Mode C airspace, Mode C Vales, Class
yeah,
B airspace, Class C airspace, and I'll just stay out of that area, and I don't need it, and it's their legal prerogative to do so. But fast forward over the years, we're now 80% call it equipped with ADSB out, right? So there's a very complete looking picture when you look at your EFB or ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot and you look at all the traffic around you. Boy, it looks like you're seeing everything because there's a lot of stuff out there,
yeah,
but there's 20% out there that you're not seeing, right? And so that's a little bit scary, and especially in an environment now where we've got drones out there and things that are harder to see and avoid.
yeah. Still a false sense of security
It
when you
is.
look at like you say, when you look at the big traffic picture. You get all this traffic on screen. I see everything. Well, not really.
Yeah, that's right. Still got to be vigilant.
So for you avionics, on the ahead of the Exponential
Excellent.
2025
Yep.
show, where is that show? Texas?
It's in Houston. Yep.
Yeah, you folks have introduced a system called Tracker,
Yep.
and it's part of the Flightline ecosystem. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, we made a couple of announcements. I'll hit them both. But Tracker, so you mentioned there that it's part of our Flightline ecosystem. So most of your audience is familiar with websites like FlightAware and Flight Radar 24, right? Flightline is a uAvionix network that is geared towards low altitude density for tracking low altitude aircraft, right? Whereas there's a difference in what we do versus what those other two sites do in a couple of ways, and that we are specifically targeting installations to support aviation use cases. Flight Radar 24, FlightAware, you think of those guys as supporting, maybe the hobbyist aviation enthusiast. I want to know who's where, et cetera, right? And so you look at the map and you see lots of planes, and again, you think you're seeing everything, but you're not, right? You're not seeing everything in a couple of cases. One, because most of those sites don't have very good UAT 978 coverage. So we solved this with a purpose-built 978 megahertz and 1090 megahertz low altitude network so that we can support beyond visual line of sight operations. And that's what the Flightline network is. And we sell that product to UAS operators and think maybe big fleets, right? And so maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but one of the biggest users of UAS operations professionally right now, think about utilities. They've got power line distributions, to inspect, and they've got a responsibility to inspect them all day, every day, right? All across, so like power distribution, water networks, transportation networks, things along those lines, and they've got crews out there every day flying literally hundreds of thousands of flights a year. And so that's what Flightline is geared toward, is to provide these operators with a confident low altitude network of ADSB that they can track other air and see other aircraft in the airspace. So we introduced a product called Tracker, and Tracker is, these utilities, they came to us and said, we see everybody else, but we've got this, operations center here with all sorts of screens on the walls, and I can see all the ADSB traffic, and I can see the weather, and I can see where my contractors are supposed to be, but I can't see those contractors. I can't see where they are. And so Tracker brings in a device that goes on their drone that gives them a private ADSB-like signal so that they can track their own operations in this airspace, in the same cooperative airspace as ADSB. So now they're seeing sort of their operations alongside the ADSB operations, and that's what the Tracker ecosystem is about. It gives them that ability to track their own ops as well as detect and avoid. We introduced another product last week, announced for next week, that we call Sky Alert, and so that's a new one as well. And again, your audience is familiar with the ForeFlight Sentry, right? We build for that product. It's a wearable version of a portable ADSB receiver, and what a lot of operators were doing is they were loading ForeFlight or loading an EFB application and using their Sentry device and trying to fly the drone and look down at the screen at the same time, and they're kind of doing this all the time and looking back and forth. So we simplified that for them and made the device wearable, and we made it with an audible alert. So it basically, they don't need a screen, they don't need to look at the EFB to see what's going on. It's going to alert them with an audible alarm if an aircraft ADSB equipped is coming within the defined range that they can determine, right? What that'll be. So so we're trying to figure out every little angle, right?
Yeah.
To be able to alert all the different types of operators that we work with.
Yeah. What's that device cost?
It's $499. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, $499. Yep.
How many do you think you'll sell? I guess where I'm getting at is how do you convince operators to be as safe as they can and make that investment so they can be safe?
Yeah, I mean, you've got this ecosystem of operators out there that some of them are, take a utility, for example, and so they've got in-house pilots that, drive around and conduct all of their operations, but almost 100% of the time they augment their existing fleet of operators with outside contractors, and the outside contractors have to meet all sorts of requirements to fly for a very legally liable company like a large utility, right? And so a lot of times this is a flow down requirement from the utility to their operators that say, if you're going to fly for me, I want you to, we've got safety operations. I want to know the training of your pilots. I want you to equip with certain types of equipment. I want you to have this, right? You got to have a certain amount of insurance, right? And so all of those things sort of stack into the operations. Now, if I'm trying to sell just to a standalone operator that has been operating for a couple of years without this, that might be a little bit harder sell, frankly, right? But it's more of a fleet angle, help bring safety to a large organization.
For you is what are you seeing as far as a larger population of drones? Is it package delivery? And I'm talking about what you describe as beyond line of sight.
Yeah,
What are we seeing more of out
what's
there?
next? Yeah.
And should we be concerned flying GA airplanes?
So in the coming days, the days might be soon, certainly weeks, not months. We believe that we're going to see a notice of proposed rulemaking come out from the FAA called Part 108. And Part 108 was an effort the whole industry has been working on for years. It didn't get published under the previous administration, so it was basically on pause and hold while new administration got in place. But it's moving again, and it's going to come back out, right? The purpose of Part 108 is to establish what the rules are going to be for beyond visual line of sight, because right now, every one of those operations is a waiver process. I want to fly beyond visual line of sight. I've got to go literally put together a package, talk to people in the FAA, get approval for my operation. And that's just not scalable at all, right? FAA doesn't have enough people to handle the inbound that's coming in. And so Part 108 is going to lay out, these are the things you need to do, types of equipment you can use, the types of data links, et cetera, right? So that's the whole industry is looking forward to that. Now, as the NPRMs go, things take a couple years still, even with the NPRM to become a final rule. So we're still looking at a couple years in the future. But trending wise, what we're seeing now is increased use by police departments and first responders. It's called DFR programs, drone as first responders. Mm-hmm. And what those systems look like most often is it's called a dock. And so it might look like a grill, right? And the lid opens up and there's a drone inside, and it takes off and flies and comes back to the grill and closes up, thumbs it back to the dock. And so what will happen is the police departments will deploy these on rooftops or in city town hall councils or a protected area, and they've got an operator somewhere in a room. So when a 911 call comes in, they're sending the drone before anybody even gets there from a police squad car perspective, right? So it's kind of like a first look at what's happening out there and kind of an overwatch function. We're seeing a lot of growth in that area. So dock operations, DFR, security operations, things along those lines are growing good. Those are great responsible users, right? So that's great. And all of those operations do require ADSB in, great, right? And sometimes they require a non-cooperative detection capability, also great, right? So in those cases, those DFR operations are you can think that you can consider them pretty safe, right, in terms of what they're going. Drone deliveries is certainly going to be a thing. It's certainly going to a lot of money being put into it. All of the major drone delivery companies are Wing, Zipline. Wing is an outreach of Google. There's one called Zipline, Amazon, as we all know those. I can tell you that all of them are using ADSB as a detect and avoid mechanism. So, kind of this, again, coming back to this environment of, boy, we sure wish everybody had ADSB out because a lot of more of these, drones are going to be flying and they're all listening for ADSB signals out there. So I think in some areas around DFW right now, there's some drone operations and deliveries going on. In Christiansburg, Virginia, there's some drone operations deliveries coming on. Charlotte, North Carolina, I think is sort of next in line to start to roll out some of those capabilities. But it's still sort of pocketized trial sites for delivery operations today.
Yeah. So I think the moral of the story is if you haven't upgraded mandate ADSB out, you probably should do it at this point, because now we're sort of in a different world than we were back when the mandate came out. And
and post
another layer of safety.
Post the DCA tragedy where the helicopter wasn't equipped with ADSB out, or it was equipped but the transponder was turned off. It just kind of highlights that risk for you. Don't know if that would have changed anything, but just kind of hits the news cycles and that they had that system turned off and don't want to be that guy.